Do you think this is a mistranslation and that back in the day there was like almost like a sport of like couples fighting?
That's one of my thoughts. I think there's either like such a popular trend of fights being broken up.
Over here we have the Smiths, and over here we have the Hamiltons. I want a nice clean fight. No grabbing around the genitals,
No
ladies.
wives getting in the middle of your nuts, all right? Just let them have it.
All right. Just nice, clean slapping and hitting from everybody. All right,
Just
now shake
chest
hands.
slapping.
Dearly beloved, welcome to the Unblessed Podcast, where we inquire and exposit the mysteries of that ancient text, that good book itself, the Holy Bible. We are not theologians nor historians. We are but armchair philosophers who spent years in seminary or on a church staff and have since departed to make our own way. We invite you now to read, think, and laugh with us as we dive deep into the denominational doctrines of the divine in the Unblessed Podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Unblessed Podcast. My name is Evan.
And I'm Scott.
And we are two ex-Sunday soloists. Scott, did you ever do a solo on Sunday?
That was a very tame and nice intro. You said you were going to surprise me, and I thought you were going to really just dig down into the trenches. But you brought a nice topic up. Sunday soloist. I did do a good chunk of those growing up. Yeah. Sunday solos, special music. Some people might have
What was
called
your go-to? What was if it was like, Scott Moran's playing today, what are people thinking?
Oh, that's a good question. See, all right, my vibe was all because I kind of had a more traditional church. I know we were a bigger church than what Evan went to because we had an actual gym. Non-carpeted. But it was still fairly traditional as far as like music went. Like we didn't have like smoke and lasers and all that stuff, you know.
None of that sinful shit.
None of that sinful shit for our services. But I felt like I was always bringing like new music to people, even though it was like a Chris Tomlin song from like 4 years prior. It was still like the brand new thing to most of the congregation. So I don't know. I don't think I had to try it and true. I feel like I would switch things up from time to time, but did you have a go-to song, Evan? Were you old sugar stick in the back pocket?
I remember there was a youth night where like some of us, like the youth band, got to play for the rest of the congregation, almost like
the real church.
Yeah, almost like a concert in a dumb way. But that's how I treated it. I was like, I'm having the time of my life.
Sure, yeah, it was the best way to get in front of people.
Yeah, but we did How Great Is Our God.
Oh, that's a great one. There
was an electric guitar solo in the middle of it.
Oh my!
Because Evan was 17.
Were you playing the solo, or did you go like, "And over to Jimmy"?
No,
it was you.
No, Jimmy wasn't playing the solo. He sucked.
I don't know if I ever did. Well, I might have done it a few times. I don't ever remember taking like an actual solo break during a song for like guitar. Like I would play guitar a lot, but I don't recall like if I was singing and playing guitar, if I'd like just go and break like. More me. I don't know. I remember.
That is absolutely what I would do.
I love this.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% of the time.
Backs away from the mic and let's get a little bit more me from this song. Just
and how great is our God. Pull
out the wah pedal. We talked about this in episode 1, but I do remember doing Agnes Day. Do you remember that song? Like, hallelujah, hallelujah, for the Lord God Almighty reigns. It's just like I don't know, one long chorus of a song. But we did that one time in youth band, and I remember cranking out the Metal Zone and just letting the guitar fly. And but man, we didn't do too many solos. I know for a time I was probably too holy for him too, to be honest. I remember being like, guys, it's not about us. It's about worship. And like, we can show off our talents, but it needs to be in a way where people kind of just glance at you like in a knowing way, but also they don't worship you. Like, people need to know that we are awesome.
If people
but
glance at you in a knowing way, you know you're doing a good job.
Yeah. It was so like, I'm just thinking about like how I tried to balance and justify that as a kid in high school. Like, that you get up in front of people and you like, everybody tells you that it's not about you. It's not about you. It's not about you. But then all you really want is make sure that it's kind of about you in the smallest way.
Yeah. And you want to make sure that you did a good job making it not about you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's
and
all
you have
you
to let
can
people
think
know
of.
multiple times during the set that it's not about you.
Yeah.
And that will seal the deal. Yeah.
Well,
Special music though.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our icebreaker today, speaking of special things, this is going to seem like a wild tangent.
Yeah. Where are we going?
But Scott, did you see the Pop-Tarts Bowl?
Anyway, enough of this church shit.
Yeah, enough of this church
Pop-Tarts.
shit. We're talking football now.
This is Evan's brain. It just goes flip and it's right to football instantly.
Imagine being married to me.
Oy, oy, oy.
Hey.
Can I get a lawyer? I saw the meme of a Pop-Tart
Okay.
at a bowl game. And that's
so
about as far as I went.
So folks who might not know, at the end of the college football season, they have bowl games. And those bowl games are just like, traditionally what they were just a nice reward at the end of the season for anybody who did well. You get to go someplace nice. That didn't happen for some teams this year because, for example, South Alabama played their bowl game in their own stadium, which seems like a crime.
Some of these are in like Ohio.
I mean, a lot of them are in like Florida, Texas, California, places like that. But they always get sponsored. And so my favorite part is when the sponsorships come out. And there was a Pop-Tarts Bowl. Listener, Google the Pop-Tart mascot, even if you're driving. Because this was a Pop-Tart Bowl with a mascot. And the mascot was picture a Pop-Tart. Picture a Pop-Tart with googly eyes and a mouth and hands and legs.
It was beautiful.
It was beautiful. I think one of my favorite moments watching it was when they came back from commercial. They had him like coming out of a toaster. It was during halftime, and one of the announcers goes, "He will die tonight."
He will die tonight.
It was because that was the whole thing. Is that at the end of the game, whoever wins would eat that mascot-sized version of a Pop-Tart. And sure enough, it happens at the end of the game. The Pop-Tart mascot goes into a toaster, and then it, somewhere else it feeds out this actual edible Pop-Tart. They didn't actually eat a person in a costume. Get Gary out of there. All of this to say, you're probably wondering what the hell this
I'm
has
loving
to
to
do.
see if you could tie this back in any shape or form.
Oh man, get ready for the home run. So,
Okay.
The Pop-Tart gets eaten, and truly the finished product is horrifying because there's a strawberry one and it's just all blood. Basically, that's what it looks like. But the Stanford football mascot, the Stanford tree, penned an open letter to the Pop-Tart mascot that says, R.I.P. to my dear friend and mentor, the Pop-Tarts Bowl mascot. I find solace in knowing that you, in being eaten, you have achieved your most precious goal. This loss is bitter and sweet, sugary and tart, just like you. And then praying hands, Leviticus 26:29.
Oh, I remember this. I forgot. So seeing something about Leviticus. What's the verse, though? You got to remind me.
It is, you will eat the flesh of your sons and the flesh of your daughters.
Jesus. Stanford tree.
Oh man, what a perfect verse. And what was funny was I was scrolling through the comments on that tweet, and most of them were just like, this hits so well. But a few of them were like, God, people just taking the Bible out of context.
Oh my God.
And I was like, this is a tree talking to a Pop-Tart.
Yeah. There's no application here.
A sermon's not going to get written on this. We're doing the most that anybody has done on a theological level regarding the Pop-Tart Bowl and the Stanford tree.
This is only offensive if you think Christ died for Pop-Tart people and living trees. That's the only way you should be offended, is if you actually think the Bible applies to them.
All trees are living.
Well, living with googly eyes and arms.
Cartoon trees.
Yeah. You know what I mean.
You know what I mean. All those living trees out there.
Like Muppets. Yeah, like they're not actually alive. The people that hold them are alive. But
yeah, mascot
we think
trees.
they're alive. Yeah, you know.
No.
Oh, my God. Just thinking that I love the thought of mascots having faith in Christ, like that there's room in heaven for these few, these servants of the Lord.
These servants of the Lord. Not the person inside the mascot.
No.
The Pop-Tart that is being portrayed.
That's right.
Blue from the
berry
Colts.
Pop-Tart. Yeah. Blue from the Colts is in heaven. We'll make it to heaven one day.
We'll make it to heaven.
Christ
one day
thought of all the sins that the Pop-Tart mascot did while he was on the cross.
Christ died for Freddy Fever.
Oh, I love this. Yeah,
Christ died for Gritty.
In any way.
Christ died for Gritty's soul.
I was going to say for Gritty.
Christ died for the Philly Fanatic. For the New York Mets baseball mascot that I don't know the name of.
Mr. Met.
Is it Mr. Met?
It's Mr. Met. He's got a giant ass head made of baseball.
One of my favorite ESPN Sports Center commercials was it was like in a coffee break, and Mr. Met was talking to some other office guy, and then a baseball player comes in, and then Mr. Met throws his coffee mug on the ground and storms out. And the baseball player is like, "What the heck was that about?" The guy goes, "Some of those homers you hit the other night, those were his cousins."
Those were his cousins. I miss those old commercials. Those are great.
Good. Well, speaking of shit that's old.
Blew out my eardrums, yeah.
Sorry. Speaking of shit that's old, Scott, what are we talking about today?
Today, we are talking about a topic that Evan and I have researched heavily. Hours, if not days, of preparation, long hours, connecting the dots, sleepless nights, compiling a very extensive list of at least 2, if not 3 verses of strange and Old Testament laws. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Because there is no topic today. We're bouncing around. We're talking about special music, Pop-Tarts. What's next, Evan?
Yep, what's next? Who knows? So what we're talking about today, for those of you who are not aware, these laws in the Old Testament, if you open up Numbers, Deuteronomy, these are laws given to the people of Israel as just kind of their laws.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's it. That's all we got.
Yeah,
Have a great night, folks.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you so much for listening. One of these laws, Deuteronomy 25, 11 through 12. Talks about if two men are fighting with each other and the wife of one steps in to rescue her husband from the one striking him, and she puts out her hand and grabs his genitals, you are to cut off her hand. You must not show pity.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. So let's...
I think the first thing I have to unpack here is this happened before.
This is, I think, one of my favorite verses of the Bible because of that question, Evan. And I don't know if this is one way or the other where this happened so much that it was so frequent that this... So let's like step back a little bit, I guess.
Women grabbing men's nuts in the middle of fights. Let the boys play.
Let the boys play.
Let them cook.
Go play with their boys. Okay, like
let them have it.
Let them have it. Don't need to stop them by their. We don't need to be any wiener pulling during fights. Yeah. All right.
No ball tugging during the fights.
No ball. Let them fight. Clean fights. Okay.
Let them fisticuffs. Don't be pulling hams. Come on now.
But
don't go fishing for trout in the middle of a fight.
Trout more like minnows, am I right? More like anchovy. I have to wonder though, was this happening a lot? Like, was it something that was a trend where people were fighting a lot, and some lady did it once, and then at the water cooler, the ladies were like, "So I heard Sheila the other day broke up a fight just by grabbing the dude's sack. Stopped it instantly. It was a miracle. Don't have to worry about breaking up fights with the boys anymore." And then all the ladies just start tugging ball to end fights? Or was there one prolific case, kind of like the, Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard kind of trial? Like it was a, Johnny so-and-so get against ball tugging Betty. And was it so viral at the time that they had to make a law about it?
The famous Junkie Gropes trial.
But in either way, I think no matter where it swings, what is so funny to me is that this is God's book. God wrote a book, and he thought, we don't need a law for clean drinking water, or what we should do if people are having, depressed thoughts. But we do need to know what people do if they're fighting and people are grabbing each other's sacks. That's important enough to be in holy
There's
war.
not a law of don't fight.
Yeah. Men can fight, for the record. You can fight all you want.
Ladies, let the boys cook. Let them fight. Let them have it out. Let them hash it out. Let them throw it. Let them throw hands if they need to. Let them get it out there. Just don't go. You can step in and be like, hey, boys, I love you both. Yada, yada, yada. You can step in. You can touch shoulder. You can touch knee. In fact, grab ass. Who cares? Do not grab genitals.
No genital pulling. Nothing. No. None of it.
Do you think this is a mistranslation, and that back in the day there was almost like a...
That's one of my thoughts. I think there's either such a popular
couples fighting
trend of fights being broken up. Yeah. Go. No wives.
Here we have the
getting in
Smiths, and over
nuts,
here we have the
right?
Hamiltons.
Just
I want a nice clean fight. No grabbing around the genitals, ladies.
Just chest slapping.
All right. Just nice clean slapping and hitting from everybody.
I just think it's so bizarre that there's so many things addressed in the Bible, and there is just so much to read and discover about the character of God and his infinite wisdom and all his planning and salvation. And it's but God had to really make sure that this verse was included in the translation. Really got to make sure. I find it so fascinating. My ESV study Bible doesn't have notes on it. It just skips over verse 11. It goes right from 5. It goes from 9 to 13. So they didn't have any translation.
No, it doesn't have anything.
Yeah. This seems fine.
Just no translation issues here. What are you asking us about?
Seems pretty straightforward to me.
I don't.
Yeah.
Don't
I
grab a guy's
no
nuts
idea
if he's
why
fighting.
this was
I don't know what to
left
tell you.
in, but I guess it was important enough.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on the
Well,
banning?
so
of women
I mean, this is like a
touching men's
bigger
nuts during
topic,
a
but
fight?
I'm curious, like, is this, we're not talking about the other part of this verse being that the punishment is that we cut the woman's hand off in this scenario. So she ends a fight. It says to rescue her husband from the hand of him who's beating him. So I think that's what's really interesting to me is that, let's say in this scenario, two men are fighting. I'm not going to assume it's a, yeah.
If two men are fighting,
She
and
goes
she's just
to
horny
rescue
and
her
grabs the
husband
nuts,
from
she's
danger.
fine.
That's when you should cut her hand off. So I just, yeah.
We're going to Jerusalem City Court right now to hear this woman's defense. I was horny. I
Every
wasn't
day
trying to
that
rescue
happens.
him. A woman has
Even the
needs.
last sentence says, your eye shall have no pity. So
Yeah.
I think that's what's really bizarre about this verse. I wasn't kidding when I said there's a lot to unpack with this verse. Is like, why do we have to show her no pity? Like, why is it like a one and done scenario of like, you touch that guy's nuts, and right here in the Bible it says, got to cut your hand off, and I'm not even gonna think twice about it. Like, maybe you did it for a noble cause, but we got to cut your hand off. So sorry about you. Yeah. You were trying to help
cut
your
your hand
family.
off. You're trying to rescue him. You weren't just feeling horny. Like we know
Very
what you're
bizarre.
trying to do, Deborah. So we got to cut your hand off.
Yeah. And
Actually,
everyone else is fine. The guy
Deborah's
that came in
husband
and broke into the house and
we're gonna
started
need
a
you to
fight
do
with
it.
the other guy, you can go away. You're fine. That's what's
the
insane
guy
to
that
me
started
is that
to punch.
it doesn't say
Deborah
find the guy
is
that started the
fine.
fight. It just says, well, the lady that tried to stop it, let's fucking cut her hand off. Yeah, and that's inappropriate.
Yeah.
And that's what
Because she tried to stop
this
it
feels
by
like how
grabbing someone's
my
genitals.
family justified certain things in the house, and then other
That's
things were
not-
completely off limits. We'd be like, I don't know about Pokemon. I just don't feel great about this whole series. But oh yeah, we can watch this movie. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's got boobs and tits and wieners in it. That's totally fine. But Pokemon, I don't know. That was our famous family movie we watch every Friday.
Boobs
It's
and tits
called,
and wieners, oh my.
Boobs, Tits, and Wieners. Is PG-13.
Some people had live, laugh, love on their wall.
Yeah, it was like a bird
tits,
clock.
wieners.
You know, they're just like blue-footed boobies, barn tits. I don't know. God, I'm the worst.
The titmus.
Okay, I think that's all I can squeeze out of that verse. But yeah,
That's fine. The next verse we have is bringing it back a little bit. It's probably a really good verse to have. It's Deuteronomy 22:8. If you build a new house, make a railing around your
Blood
roof
guilt.
so that you don't bring
Ah,
blood
gee.
guilt on your house if someone falls from it.
guy fell off the roof again. I'm gonna feel guilty about this one.
Ah, gee.
Yeah, just so you don't feel
Not-
guilty about it.
Not so no one will die.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah,
So
that
we got
you aren't
OSHA
responsible
laws
for the death.
in the Bible about building roofs, you know, but then I'm just so fascinated that I can't really think off the top of my head what laws are missing necessarily, but I find it fascinating that people will say, and I feel like I say this every episode, but people will say, well, the Bible is like my source of truth. It's my guiding book. I follow that. That's how I live my life. And I'm thinking, like, it doesn't tell you that speeding's wrong. It doesn't tell you about, you know, I think it does say do your taxes every year, but it doesn't say, you know, like, I don't know, invest or something that maybe it does there. Actually, the Bible's great. I'm convincing myself that the Bible's perfect. You know?
You know what? I'm actually dumb.
No, it's like I mean
Yes.
these are laws for a civilization that is developing, like it's building itself right now,
Yes.
and
Yep.
it's putting everything into code so that everybody would follow the same thing. That's what it's trying to do. But within that, based on the time period in which they are, and just apparently happenstance of stuff happening enough that there needs to be a law about it. You get some laws soaking in that are a little bit out of left field, it seems like. The house one is hilarious, I think, because it's focused on the person building the house and being like, you're going to have to owe somebody money, or like whatever. You're going to owe the family of the person who died walking around the roof of your house, when this law could be written two ways. One is, build a railing around your house so that no one trips over it and dies or whatever.
Wear a rope.
The other one is don't walk on roofs.
Have a buddy system. Yeah.
Yeah, like
3 points of contact at all times on a roof.
Like,
yeah. It does just seem like, and I think that's why it's funny is because
exactly.
You said it perfectly. Is that it is a developing society, and so you think about all the codes and regulations and things we figured out in the last couple thousand years because people have died and people have done stupid stuff, and we've learned, okay, let's pass a law so we don't do that stupid thing anymore. I think it's just funny to think about, and a lot of these things are still problems of today. Like we haven't, we're still people. These are still people, even though it's thousands of years of difference. There's still some of the same problems that are happening. Yep, still walking on roofs. I still get into fights with random strangers in the
walk around on
wives. Yeah, it happens every week, I think. But I think it's what's funny is that like that's
nuts.
How I don't know, anthropologists and sociologists learn about ancient cultures is by their laws that they've passed, and you kind of discover a little bit about what was important at the time. And I think that's what's funny is that if it's a law, it probably happened more than once. Like it wasn't just a one-off occurrence. So yeah, people were falling off roofs and dying a lot. People are getting into fights and getting grabbed by the balls a lot. Yeah, I just think it's
a lot.
These are the guiding principles of our society so far. So, yeah.
Another verse we have over here. So this is written by God. We do know this. And God understands what every person has gone through. Jesus is probably the only man who has ever known what it's like to have a period. That is biblically accurate.
That is the
because
strangest
Jesus knows
theology that I don't know how to put my head around. That would get peddled to me all the time, that Jesus knows every experience. I'm like, does he know what it's like to beat Pokemon Red in the middle of the night? Does he?
Have cramps?
Who knows?
Does he? Mm-hmm. With that being said, Leviticus 15, starting in verse 19. When a woman has a discharge and it consists of blood from her body, she will be unclean because of her menstruation for 7 days. Everyone who touches her will be unclean until evening. Anything she lies on during her menstruation will become unclean, and anything she sits on will become unclean. Everyone who touches her bed is to wash his clothes and bathe with water.
Incredible.
And he will remain
I'm sure this
unclean
did wonders
until
for
evening.
women for hundreds of years after this. I don't see any issues.
Honestly, it was the women's menstruation movement that got this law passed. Beforehand, people were just like, menstruation.
Doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. And,
That's right.
but then the feminists of the biblical era, the women's menstruation movement, were like, we're here, we bleed. We're here, we bleed. And we're picketing outside of
Lord help
the
me.
tabernacle until this law got passed.
I think that's exactly how it went down. Yep. It was stop. This is going to be a 30-minute episode.
Susan B. Crampton was the leader.
Cannot. Oh. Susan B. Crampton. I'm moving on from that. I think it's crazy that these were laws. Stop. Log off the computer.
The B stands for blood.
Now. God. Listeners, you've been waiting, 2-3 weeks for this episode? If you've even been waiting for us, I don't know. And you're getting an episode of unprepared Old Testament verses mixed with Evan making period joke, not like period pieces, like period jokes. Like, oh, well, that's a really tasteful and timely period joke about the old time. No, period jokes. Good Lord. This is episode, I don't know, 50 something, and I thought we'd have our act together by now.
Oh man.
Oh my God.
We're just getting warmed up.
I don't even remember. I was trying to make a point about verses like this.
What were you saying?
Have affected women in the long term. But I don't even care anymore, but it did.
But I mean, like, this does, to your point, like, this does inject this idea of a perfectly normal, regular human thing that happens to a group of people.
Yeah. It's not
that
like
they are unclean and
unclean, like uncleanliness. I know that there's certain
period
verses
of
that are
time.
just saying like, oh, like if you're sick, like, so it's, it's not saying being sinful sick, but at the same time, they would think if you got sick, it was probably because you did something wrong against God and you were, you didn't do the right action or you sinned against somebody and God punished you. And I can't help but wonder if, did everybody think they got their, their period, that they were doing something wrong and they were unclean? I mean, the implications, hundreds of years of just people acting like this is just something we should hide away from society and can never, I mean, Jesus, I don't think it was till of recent generations, it's finally been like a public, I'd say education, but I remember I was talking about like, I remember like I was talking about one of my grandparents, how they had to hide their pregnant bellies like in person. They would just like, you couldn't go out and like, oh, I'm pregnant and I'm just going to go to the grocery, like hide away from society, essentially. Because I remember my grandma was like, oh, I couldn't go out with my belly like that. It's like crazy. So how much we just shunned half our society. But
jeez.
Anyway, all these verses. Let's find another one. We got roofs. We got ball handling. We got periods. There's just some
roofs,
other random ones that I was
ball
finding,
handling, and periods.
some people probably have heard of, but there's like ones where you can't have a bag. This is also Deuteronomy 25. Can't have a bag with miscellaneous weights in it. You can't have one that's large and small. I think that's supposed to be,
This is true.
so people don't try to deceive you. If you're like selling things, you can show them like, oh, it's a pound of flour and actually have a different weight. But there's lots of little laws like that, like little things you can't wear, like linen, or what was it? Wear clothing with two different types of either linen or wool on it.
Yeah. And like, I mean, consider this, that there's no decentralized form of government. There's no FDA. There's no free trade commission. There's none of that. So this is all being passed down from a federal source.
Yeah.
In a sense. So it's all being written as law. It's not like, all right, in this section is about foods and
It's
drugs.
just a smattering of laws
section is
they
about,
put together.
you know, exactly. That section is about the proper trade of commerce. Like, like you said, it's just it's just a book of laws on, regular day-to-day life.
And
which makes for
I think about, like you were mentioning, how these are all part of the laws they had at the time. And I remember when I was in my deep theological days, a fellow named John Piper, he tried to explain why certain verses in the Old Testament should not and could not apply to today's Bible-believing Christians. And I remember there's 3 categories of laws. There was, if I remember, ceremonial laws, moral laws, and civil law. And I always remember he was like, John Piper would say, any law that was moral law, that is God's character and truth, and that will always remain. But ceremonies, those went away when Jesus, cut the temple fabric in two, and then certain civil laws, now that, we have a society, we don't need the civil laws of ancient, Israel and blah, 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 blah. And I think that's a well thought out and great idea. The problem is how do you know which law falls under what category? Like, there's no index of which, like you were saying, there's no like, now let's move on to the moral laws. Like, how do you know which one's which? So
yeah. How do you know that cutting off a woman's hand if she touches her genital
once a year on
is
Christmas,
moral or civil?
Santa will fight the devil.
Oh.
And then Santa's wife, Mrs. Claus, will get her hand cut off. And then we light the Christmas tree.
Mrs. Claus.
While she bleeds out on stage. Yeah. I don't know. I always remember thinking that thought of how do we decipher which verses apply to today and which ones don't, or which laws apply to today and which ones don't. I don't think there's a great answer. I don't think Christians have much room.
Yeah. And it draws the line too hard, I think, because who's to say that a civil law is not a moral law? In the respect of, like, put railings around your roof. Like, if your buildings are going to be that close together to where people need to, like, walk over your buildings to get to where they need to go if the street's too busy, or like if where you live is going to be part of the foot traffic, then you should put up a railing so that people don't fall over. You should be.
Well, that's what's interesting. Yeah, like you said, is there a deeper
or in your life
meaning to verses to find the morality of it? Like, to me, it's not the moral thing of putting up a railing isn't just for the sake of doing it, but it's to help others not die. Like, you're helping others, you're being considerate, and that's kind of the heart of it. But I've always, I'm trying to remember how
and would the period law be moral, ceremonial, civil?
No, ask John Piper.
Where are we with that? What does it fall under?
I would say that's like a civil law. If I was John Piper, I'm gonna see if I can find his stuff he was talking about. But I don't know. I don't know how you decipher, like, okay, women are now clean and it's fine. Like, actually, we were just kidding. That was just an ancient law from when we didn't know anything. I don't know. It seems strange. And then that begs the question then, if you can do away with a verse, is God's word done away with? Like, does it not matter anymore because we've moved on as a society? Like, how did you justify that thought? I feel like everyone had that thought at some point in their Christian beliefs.
Yeah. I focused on So the way that I saw it was that the old laws were very much building a society. That was their purpose, was to give a society guardrails. Crazy as it was, guardrails. That's why the first commandment was be fruitful and multiply.
Catholics, yeah.
In order to have society, you gotta have kids.
Don't tell anymore to the Catholics. Stop telling it to the Catholics for the love of God, please. Stop telling it to Philip Rivers and his 9 children.
Stop telling the Catholics to have children. We need less.
Yeah.
Please stop telling all of Notre Dame to have kids.
Yeah.
But so, it was more of a development of society. And I think you have stories that you draw morals from the Old Testament, but where I gleaned it was, I never really focused on the whole law side of it when I was a Christian, because people would just harp on I used to just think about works and yada yada when I was a Christian, and and I realize now that we're saved by grace and not through works. And I even my early days as a Christian, I was like, I don't think I was ever doing anything because I thought it would get me into heaven. I think I just did.
Yeah, I felt
did
that
the
too.
right
I didn't ever
thing
think as a kid
because it was the right thing.
It's funny because adults were always preaching it's not by your works and how good of a person you are, and I always remember thinking okay, I'm just kind of just trying to live life without getting in trouble. Really, that's what I'm just trying to do. I'm not really. I never thought about earning a place in heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to, I'm trying to do right by everybody else around me. I'm trying to do right by my friends and, certain people. And so it's just I'm not why do you feel like you need to say that it's not by works?
I don't know.
What's happening
I never
with
really
you
thought
there,
about
bud?
what I thought as a kid. I don't remember working for my salvation, but
God doesn't care about your works. He doesn't care what he doesn't care what good things you've done, what bad things you've done. He doesn't care how many people you ministered to or if you've been on Epstein's
I've
Island.
never been to that theme park, by the way.
He doesn't care. He doesn't. Yeah. He doesn't care if you've been on mission trips or how much sex you had on
What
Epstein's
does he care
Island.
about, Evan? All he cares about is that if you saw 2 grown men
is that you
fighting,
did the work of
that you didn't grab any of those guys' wieners. If you didn't do that, you're fine. And the whole grace, saved by grace, blah, 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 blah. But especially, we really can't have anybody in heaven grabbing nuts and grabbing
Looking at you,
none
Cheryl.
of that. Heaven is we can't emphasize it enough.
Heaven is
We had
a
heaven
no
1.0.
place.
Everybody was grabbing weens.
Guys can grab each other's nuts. Let's be clear.
Totally fine. Guys can wrestle
grab
all
each
day.
other's nuts. That's totally okay and not gay at all. Ladies,
Stop it. Or the guy that's beating up your
Ladies?
husband. If your guy's beating your
don't go
husband
grab
down
your
to a
husband's
pulp
nuts in heaven.
and the
Yeah, well, the guy that's being. Wouldn't it be wild to
the first was
a fight
someone breaks into your house
own husband's
and is
nuts?
beating the living sense out of your husband, and then you just see. All right, I think that's what the verse is about: is that your husband is getting his ass whooped by a stranger, and then your punk wife goes over there and grabs the guy already getting beat up, grabs his balls. I think maybe cutting your hand off could be justified. Jesus, yeah.
Maybe there's some mistranslation.
We don't need to.
Yeah, where it's
grab
like,
his
all right,
dick
the
and
guy's
twist
already
it.
down. You don't need to grab and twist his nutsack.
No. Maybe it was a saint. It's
we don't need to make it worse on the poor
it's like
fella.
Cops, the
come
show.
on now.
I used to watch that show a lot when it was on, but there was times where they would go to the same house over and over and over again in the show, and the cop would be so tired, oh, it's another domestic call from so and so. Maybe it was just the one couple that was just so freaking always on, always in fights. Yeah. Always getting in fights, always breaking up with ball
we're at the
busting. We got to
Fergusons
put
again.
a law into the books for them. Maybe we'll put the fear of God into them.
Every single week, Daniel's balls get twisted.
Yeah. We have a banner in our
And
library.
we are a be fruitful and multiply society.
Oh my
we need this to stop. We know his seed's
Jesus
loaded.
Christ.
We know that he's
Grandma,
got
this is
a
where you stop listening
sperm
right now.
gun down there.
Right here.
We have to
If
protect
you
it.
stop paying attention, just go ahead and turn it off now. You know, for a hot second, I used to think my family would.
Excuse me,
listen to
Nana.
this podcast. No, I don't think so. That ship has sailed.
That's
God.
woefully optimistic.
Man, I had something else to say about that, but then I lost. Yes, heaven and working towards heaven. I don't remember doing that. And to bring it back to laws is, I do remember having that thought of like, what do I do with these strange laws? Like the ones about not having, you can't have like a cheeseburger because you can't like cook a cow in its own milk or whatever. You can't like mix, you can't have pork, things like that. I remember thinking, well, I love pork tacos. I love bacon, why not? And so I think,
Yeah.
I love dipping. Who doesn't love milk pork?
I love dipping my pork in milk.
Porky milk. It sounds like
I
some
love milky
like
pork.
local TV car salesman. If you want 2% down, come on down to Porky Milk Chevrolet Auto. Ain't porking around over here. I'll milk the best prices out of you that I can get. Oh, God.
Jesus.
Shut
Someone off to the side. Don't believe him? Dairy.
Don't believe in dairy. Oh, my God. Oh, I want to, all right, like kind of the final thoughts here. I want to know, like, Evan, at your peak Christianity, how did you justify kind of breaking some of these laws? Because, like, you had bacon, or you wear clothes with two different threads. Did you just go, whatever, God's got this? Or did you have some sense of, like, I got to figure out a way to justify this in my life?
By being fucking American.
Oh, yeah, that's the next verse right here. Yeah. Yep.
How about that?
Yeah. I mean,
But then also, like, yeah. Also, it doesn't count for Americans because they're fucking awesome. No, I think for me, it was
Sure.
my loose understanding of the idea that Jesus fulfilled the law.
You're like,
Whatever that
it's
meant,
fine.
I knew that meant that, like, I could eat shellfish. Yeah, shrimp's fine. Like, I could eat pork, I could drink milk. I like
Not with pork.
stuff like
pork
that.
in it.
Like, it's just, which, like, you could drink milk, but, like, I think,
Yeah, you can't drink wool.
not with pork or shellfish, or wool. Can't drink milky wool. But no, I think it was like the whole idea of the only thing that matters is believing in Jesus. That is what gets you into heaven. And to my credit, they informed my opinions on a lot of things because, like, I remember there was a whole, and we can talk about this as well, but there was a whole thing in my youth group where it was like, you can't have women pastors, can't have women pastors. But I grew up going to a Methodist church where there were plenty of women ministers. And I just remember having the counter argument of, like, if the worst thing she's doing
Like, God, oh no.
is leading a congregation, I think she's gonna be fine. Like, oh dear God. Like, are you saying that a woman pastor, by being a woman pastor, is going to hell?
That was the gray area. Is like,
my question is, like, is
no one had the gumption to
we're
say
dealing with
this
right or
is
wrong
absolutely
here.
wrong, but they would be like, it's just not what God desires for his church body. Like, he prefers that men are leading worship, blah, blah. I remember having a very long conversation in youth group about, and I've probably talked about this in the past, but women worship leaders. And at the time, I didn't know what I thought because you read verses and it was like, women shouldn't lead prayer. Women shouldn't be pastors, blah, 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 blah. So people just kind of put the puzzle together like, well, if they can't be pastors, they shouldn't be leading worship. And I remember a couple girls on our worship team that would do backup vocals, because that's all they could really do at the time. They were like willing to lead worship, were more enthusiastic to do it. And then instead we had to go with, yours truly or some other jokers to lead worship when we had perfectly willing people, but just because they're women, we couldn't put them in front of people. It didn't really make sense. And I was always curious. Yeah. Cause I felt like that was a constant battle for me, was like seeing some of these verses that were old and trying to figure out how to justify them. Cause I think what stuck in my brain was, what did Jesus do in his ministry? Cause I always just imagined that Jesus didn't care about certain laws either. Like, yeah, of course he was having, lobster tail and pork in his milk and whatever. But then like when I learned that Jesus, which is crazy, I learned it so late in life. When I learned that Jesus was a Jew, I was like, what? Like Jesus is Jewish? Like he learned, like he followed all the Jewish law, like down to the T. And that's when things started like changing. Like, well, how do I like justify all these Old Testament laws? Because if Jesus did them, then I should do them because I want to be like Jesus. So why not? And then you start rabbit holing down that, but confusing time. And then puberty's happening at the same time. You're just all over the place.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well,
You're just
final
horny and
thoughts
confused.
on Old Testament verses, Evan. They do be whack.
They whack.
Yeah, absolutely.
They do be whack.
Let them cook.
They out here cooking something.
Yeah, let the Old Testament
special,
writers cook.
Let me tell you. Let them cook. Let them cook. Let the two.
We should have just said this
cook. Don't
episode
grab
is
anybody's
about
balls.
ball tuck and fighting. But I'm proud. I'm proud of us.
Truly. We packed more in than we really should have. Me too. I'm proud of us. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. You can find us on all points of social media at UnblessedPod. We also have a website, unblessedpodcast.com. That's
And I'm Scott.
unblessedpodcast.com. But thank you again so much for listening. We really appreciate it. And my name is Evan. And if a fight breaks out between two men,
Or else we're going to cut your hand off
and you
and
are
shoot you,
trying
no
to
kidding.
save your husband, do not grab his balls.
Period.
Or else we will cut your hand off.